Here we go.
All right, here we go. We are live. Welcome, everybody, to the Redeemed Legion podcast. This is episode 7, and we are very excited to have everybody with us tonight. Before we get going, real quick, just a couple things. Guys, our social media has been blowing up recently. We've had a lot of new people watching us on social media, and we really appreciate that. A lot of interaction. And just encourage everybody that's listening to this to check us out. TikTok and YouTube are our biggest platforms. We're doing some stuff on Facebook too. So check us out at Redeemed Legion on those platforms. Also, if you guys want to check out redeemedlegion.com, we've got a lot going on there. We've got some merchandise on there, some blog stuff, lots of announcements about live meetings that are happening here in Central Texas. So check us out there, and we appreciate y'all watching. We are very excited tonight. We have a special guest on tonight's episode. We have David with us, and we're going to get into David's story. So, David, welcome to the podcast, and thanks for being here.
Thanks for the invitation.
Absolutely. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Where'd you grow up?
Well, I was born in Chickasha, Oklahoma, but I grew up in Texas. And when I say grew up, I mean I grew up. So we left Chickasha, Oklahoma when I was 13 and moved to the Texas Panhandle, and it was a whole different life than it was here in Chickasha. So
Okay. Did you brothers, sisters?
I am number 10 of 10 kids.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good for your parents. That's
Yeah.
How was that? How was that growing up in a family that big?
Let's see. Yeah, all of you played football, right?
Yes, sir.
At some point. So you know what the tackling dummy is?
Yes,
That's
sir.
what it was like. That's what it was like.
That's fantastic. Were you raised in a Christian home as a child?
Uh-oh.
Was I got a phone call that knocked me off of Zoom here. Okay, I'm back.
There we
You're
go.
back.
Yes, raised in a Christian home. Um, there's a lot to that answer. So raised in a Christian
That's
home, but man, I didn't know how real God was until I was 50 years old, right?
okay.
So when
What
he reveals himself.
Yeah, agreed. Can you expound on that a little bit? What did church life or church education, Bible education, what did that look like growing up?
Um, just going to church every Sunday, every time the door was open, we go to church, and I guess I was saved at 15 years old, but didn't really know a lot about what that meant. It didn't change my life any. Later, we're going to just get right into the meat of it. So later, after being baptized at 15 years old, I got a girl pregnant, and so that that was a defining moment in my life. It changed my life. But you know, being grown up in the church and not wanting to disappoint my parents or the church, I didn't tell anybody. Right. So it's one of the things we did. We had an abortion, and let me back up a little bit. One of the things that you guys said earlier on some of your previous podcasts is teaching men to be men, and if I start crying, just know that
We're good
that's
with
okay
that.
for a man
Yeah,
to do too,
that's all right.
because it happens. Anyway, so I'm not wanting to disappoint the church or my family or get in trouble. We didn't tell anybody, and so this is something I just kept inside for 40 years. And when God starts calling you to make amends, to correct something that you've done, it's hard to deny it. When he starts talking to you, you know it. And somebody asked me one time, well, how do you know when God's talking to you? Because he doesn't stop. He don't stop. It's he's going to get your attention, and he did.
Yeah.
So it was about less than 10 years ago, probably. I confessed at a family reunion what I had done at 15 years old, and as soon as I let it out, God started working and putting things in motion for me to help other people to make it through the same kind of situation. So it's led us to, my wife and I, to 2 different ministries that we run. So
if we can just go back there, and completely up to you what you want to share. But we talk to a lot of guys, and we have a kind of a wide ranging audience age wise, but certainly there's some guys that are younger that listen to this stuff, and I think your story is really powerful. So if you can just kind of expound on what happened when you were 15, and then you had a lot of formative years after that. How did that affect you going forward? You were 15. I mean, a 15-year-old kid's still got a lot of years left to kind of develop into the person he's going to be. So how did those events affect that for you?
Well, I think never really thought about that, other than it taught me to hide things, right? If I can hide that, I can hide anything. I probably got to be a pretty good liar out of that. I don't know. But just, I think that was the main thing, is just learning that you can hide things from people. You can hide things from God, or you think you can.
Yeah. So all that happens, and you learn to hide things, and you've got this history now as you're growing older. What happened what'd you do after high school?
Right out of high school, I went to work in the oil field, and really had good jobs, just one after another. Worked basically for 7 different companies for almost 40 years. That ended up being, just one rolls into another, and I think the last 14 years was with British Petroleum. Very well paid. Just, it was a great career, but it was making money, trying to raise your kids, be somebody in the town. Even to the point of trying to be somebody in the church. And I think probably one of the biggest defining moments in my life was mid to late 30s, and I've got 3 kids, and my middle son, or my middle kid, was a son, and he we went to church one day, and I'm doing the church thing, and I don't remember what the sermon was about or anything like that. But after church was over, you know how it is when you get the kids ready for church and nobody's getting ready, so you yell at them and maybe a few cuss words, whatever. I got this thing I got to do at church, and so I got to be there on time, and so we did all that. And after church, we get in the car, and son's in the back seat, and he looks in the mirror at me, and I look at him, and he said, "Dad, you're a hypocrite." Wow.
Yeah.
So that was a reality check for me. And so you would think if you were going to correct something, you would correct it right then. But I didn't. I basically didn't go back to church for 10 years or so after that. Right? It's like, I don't know what to do with that. I don't know how to not be a hypocrite. That's I don't know. It's just, it was in me, right? So ran from God for a while, and chased money, and thought I was somebody, and ended up losing my family over it. Got a divorce, and God was very gracious to me, though. He allowed me another chance, and I've got a beautiful wife and 8 grandkids, and 4 kids and 8 grandkids. Can't forget the kids, I guess. And God is good.
Amen. So, when can you talk a little bit about, you got divorced, and then you said you had about 10 years where you were kind of running from God. What changed that?
Well, like I said earlier, when God starts talking to you, it's hard to avoid him. And he got my attention. Julie and I talked, and that's my wife, Julie. We talked, and we decided it was time to get it out, get the skeletons out of the closet. And so we did. And God started lining things up, putting people in our lives that we needed. And I don't know, it's just, I don't know. It's hard to explain how he got my attention, but he did. And then we start looking back. It's hindsight's. It's easier to see stuff in hindsight than it is looking forward. And I started realizing that God was with me through everything, and he started revealing himself to me, that he had been with me through everything. And one of the first things was when I met Julie. It's a pretty cool story. I've told it to Drew before. And by the way, everybody that's watching, Drew's my son-in-law. So
Hey,
I
he owned me.
didn't know if I was going to say it, but I did. It came out.
We got him in a weak moment.
We got him.
Yeah. So anyway, I met my wife after being divorced, and first time I had went to see my kids, and we go to Albuquerque, New Mexico, and we climb the mountain, the San Bernardino mountain, or I think that's what it is. And Julie and her family's on the other side of the mountain, and they come up that one side of the mountain, we come up the other, but we never meet. And we go back down. And so, people often ask, well, if you didn't meet, then how did you meet? Right. So that night, for whatever reason, I said, I'm just kind of homesick. I want to go back home. And home was in Houston, and nobody wants to go back home to Houston, but I did. So I changed my flight, and she changed her flight the same night. We both ended up on the same flight, which is 3 flights out of Albuquerque to Houston, which Albuquerque to Austin, I think it was, and then to Dallas, and then something like that, 3 flights. And so we had a lot of time to sit by each other. It was the last seat on the plane, and I got to sit by her. So that's how we met.
No way.
And that was looking back, that was kind of an eye opener. It's like, we didn't have to meet that night. We shouldn't have met that night, right? But God orchestrated it to where we did, and we've been together ever since. So
that's an amazing story.
I don't know how people think that things happen by chance.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think a point to, well, just something I want to ask you, because we talk to a lot of guys that, go through periods like you went through, where they're kind of struggling. Maybe they walk away from their faith, things like that. Would you say during that time, during that kind of 10-year stretch, would you say that I know you said you were running from God, but was there ever a time when you were seeking God out of that? Or do you think that he really just brought you back in? He just pulled you in. Does that
I
make
think
sense?
I think it was him seeking more of me than I was seeking him.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
he was pursuing me.
Yeah. And I think that's an important point to make here. Because like I said, we talk to a lot of guys that are just feeling lost, or they're, have kind of walked away and things like that. And the point I'm getting at is that you're a living testimony to God seeking us out, God drawing us in. It really is his power and his love that draws us to him, right? It's not necessarily the other way around. And I think that's just an important point for guys to hear.
Yeah. I really didn't want to be found by him, I think.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, in line with this same topic, 10 years away, at some point you came back to church for the first time. Do you remember that time? Like the first time that you came back to church?
Not really, but I remember because it took a while to find a church family, but I remember the first time that I actually found a true church family that I felt loved in and felt a connection with. I do remember that. Yeah.
I was curious if we could just talk through a little bit about what that was like, because I think that a lot of times guys, when they get separated from church, whether they've never gone or they've done some things in their life and then they've drawn this line and faded away, it feels more and more of like a mountain to break through and go back for the first time. So I'd love to hear if you remember any of like sort of your story and moments and decisions and like how that happened. How did you end up back in the building again?
Well, I can't really remember that because, like I said, it took a while to find a church home.
Mhm.
Going from where do I fit? What church do I fit in, and what do I believe in? And right, I mean, I realized that God was real and He'd called me back. But how do I worship Him?
Yeah.
How am I supposed to worship Him? And it took a while to find that, and I found it at a church home in Oklahoma. And I realized after going there and them feeding me God's word and feeding on God's word that a lot of the stuff that I grew up was it was a form of worship, but denying the power, like the Bible says. And he's all powerful. And so I see that now and didn't see it back then.
So, David, you had this super successful career. You were doing
I don't know
the,
about super successful, but it was good.
oh, you're super successful guy in my book. So you had this career and everything, and I mean that's a lifetime career for a lot of people. And now you're out of it. You're not doing it anymore. Will you talk a little bit about kind of what you're doing now, or maybe what transitioning out of that career and into the things that you're doing now?
Yeah, so it was a good career. It was there was a lot of different opportunities, and so I did a lot of different things in the oil field. And um, after 40 years of it, when God called me to do something different, it was start a ministry for. We run a ministry called Go Life, and we do free ultrasounds for young pregnant mothers, and it was just a way to give back and try to help people through a situation like I wish somebody would have been there to help me and the girl through the situation, right? So we've done that for about 4 years now, and in that experience of run and go life, working at Go Life, we've noticed a lot of things about people's situations, and young pregnant mothers have a lot of things in common. Most of them running from God. Most of them don't have a man in their life. And so, me being a man, I try to speak to the men as often as I can, even on the sidewalk, talk to them and just try to get their attention and tell them my story and let them know that, hey, I understand what you're going through too, right? And you need to be there for that woman and for that girl and for that baby. So we've done that for 4 years. One of the other things that, and I'm sure we'll get back to that, but one of the other things that we saw during those 4 years was inadequate housing. A lot of these girls are poor and need housing. So we've started a new ministry called Earthly Dwellings. And we're going to be building homes for people and building communities of small homes. So teaching people how to live together and take care of one another and love one another, right?
So those are both huge things that I think a lot of people who are in ministry, they feel like they come under attack quite a bit. You have a target on your back. So I imagine probably more than I even know that you guys have run into blockades or people trying to derail your mission. So if you could just kind of talk to the point of, maybe sometimes it got difficult or something and, God made that way for you, or how y'all have overcome those things that you've encountered.
Well, I think the Julie and the girls that work there they probably see a lot more than I do. I'm more on the politics side, trying to meet with lawmakers and understand why laws are like they are and what do we need to do to change the laws, but at the same time be compassionate to people. And so my experience is a little different than theirs, but I think one of the things that we quickly realized when we got into doing this was to Go Life was we're trying to provide a service and show Jesus to these people. And there's a lot of people that say they are, but they come about it the wrong way. And it's like yelling at somebody.
Mm-hmm.
You can't yell at them and tell them you love them and it make any sense to them, right? So we battled that, trying to figure out, well, how do we share this sidewalk with these different groups and be who God's called us to be and not turn into who they are or who they think we should be. So that was probably the hardest thing, was just trying to navigate it's a very hot topic, right? So trying to navigate the conversations every day has been difficult.
What was the jumping off point? Like, how did this start? How did Go Life start?
Good question. So after I told my family, I got asked to attend a retreat, a healing retreat for women who had gone through abortion, and they asked me to go as a man and share my viewpoint. So I said, okay, I'll go, and really didn't have any plans of going, but at that time I was still in the oil patch, and I had a rig running down in South Texas. And so took my wife with me, and we go out with navigation on the phone, and we find the rig down there in the middle of nowhere. It's Cow Patch Road, and we find the rig. And second day I go back, she's not with me, but I found it fine. Third day I go back, and I'm driving down this Cow Patch Road and talking to God and just wondering, God, what do you want me to do now? Right? I've told my story, and I've got all this guilt, and what am I going to do about this guilt, and how can I make a difference? And I remember all of a sudden looking up, and I'm thinking, I've missed my turn. I have no idea where I'm at. So I'm looking around, and I see this sign on the side of the road up ahead. And I remember laughing and talking to God and saying, well, God, maybe this is my sign. And so I pull up to this sign to turn around, and it's a sign that says, pray to end abortion, in the middle of nowhere. And the hair stands up, and I'm like, all right, you got my attention. You got my attention. So we called a number on the sign, and we got a hold of a lady in Norman, Oklahoma, and she told us about what Pray to End Abortion meant, 40 Days for Life campaign. And I remember the conversation. She just starts crying. She said, I've been praying for somebody to call me and ask me what this is all about. And she said, you're the first one that ever called, and you wanted to know what this is about. So we just hit it off. And so I felt like, okay, there's something here. I need to go to the abortion clinic and figure out what this is all about, what is happening, and try to equate it to what I went through, what we went through at 15, and make sense of it, right? So we did, and started going to the sidewalk and just watching people and figure out again how we fit into this. And I went to the retreat, and after the retreat was over, it was a 3-day retreat. Never cried so much in my life, just not for me, but for listening to these women tell their story and understanding that, wow, everybody came to this decision to have an abortion for different reasons and different dynamics in their life, and it was just powerful. And so after it was over, one of the girls that worked there, she said, I want to go show you a prayer garden. And so I said, okay, we'll go see the prayer garden. And we're looking at this prayer garden, and it's across the street from an abortion clinic. And I'm just thinking, somebody needs to be out here providing free ultrasound for these ladies right here, right? And something catches my eye, and I look over to the left, and there's this mobile unit, and it says Go Life on it. I'm like, what is that? So it was Go Life Mobile Medical. And so we went and talked to them and told them what we were thinking. And we were wanting to maybe start a business like that. And they said, well, don't waste 4 or 5 years of your life trying to get this done. Join us. So we did. So we started the first branch in Norman, Oklahoma, and it just took off from there. And we've been doing that for 4 years. And
That's
It's amazing.
Saved hundreds of little babies. That's the cool part.
Yeah, that is amazing. Can you give us just us and the listeners, can you give us just an example of one of these encounters that you've had? You know, you get a young pregnant lady that's, you know, considering her options, and then she runs into you guys, right? And you take off and you do your thing. What does that look like? How does that go? It has to be I can only imagine it's an amazingly powerful experience.
It is, and there's so many different experiences. None of them are the same. Those are the great ones where you make a difference, and you know you made a difference, and you get to see that baby down the road a couple of years later. We've had a few of those where they'll bring them back, and we get to see that. The majority of them are not that way. The majority of them is people are determined whether it be a grandmother taking her granddaughter in to get an abortion, or we know we've seen a lot of incest and family molestations and stuff like that, where they're bringing them in and they are very hostile. They don't want to talk to you. They don't want God. They don't want a solution that we have to offer. They want to end that pregnancy. So those are the hard ones, ones that you wish you could have done better. You wish you always critique yourself. What could I have done? What could I have said to that person or not said to that person? Those are the tough ones. The good ones are the ones that come in and you know that they're abortion determined, but when you hear them in the room there getting the ultrasound, and all of a sudden they're laughing and they're happy and they're excited that they're going to be a parent. Those are the good ones. Wish we had more of those. We were all that way.
Yeah, that's amazing. What how does I know you said you dealt with the political side of things more, and I assume you're talking to legislators and different folks like that. What does that look like? How does that process even work? How do you get in the door?
It's pretty easy to get in the door. It's more difficult to get their attention and get back in the door the second time. Right? If you're their voter, their constituent, they're going to let you in the door and they'll listen. But I think, again, I had to differentiate myself from the people who were going to go in their office and yell at them and demand things, right? Again, fruits of the Spirit, right? You go into an office and you think peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control. Give me all those. And that's difficult at times when you're talking to lawmakers and legislators, and but they're human too. They have hearts. They want to do the right thing. It's not always easy for legislators to do the right thing. In my mind, they're doing the right thing in their mind, and they don't always coincide. But just it's an ongoing thing. It's just you got to stay constant with them, building relationships with them, and show them kindness and respect, and then eventually they come around.
Yeah.
What's the sorry, Brendan, did you have another question?
No, go ahead.
What's the biggest thing you think that you could benefit from on your mission at Go Life specifically right now? Like if there was something, anybody that's listening to this that is inspired by to help or to pray about, even, like what does that mission need?
Well, prayer, they always say prayer first. And in this case, that's exactly what it is. Prayer is needed more than anything. And I've often said that if somebody gave us $1 million or $10 million, that's not what we need. We need awareness more than anything. So it's just since 1973, abortion was deemed legal in 1973. And so you don't just turn culture upside down because of the latest law, right? Roe being overturned doesn't mean it's not still first and forefront on people's mind when they get pregnant. Well, we got to get rid of it. This is not our time. So it's just going to take a lot of time. And again, that kindness that we got to show to people, and understanding of how they got there, and help them to get out of the situation that they're in the right way, not the wrong way.
So there's a lot of you can find facts to support anything you want to support, right? What would you point people to get some real facts about the abortion industry, and whether it's the abortion industry or laws affecting it, or statistics, things like that. Where's a place that people can go to build that awareness, and kind of learn what's going on in our country?
Well, so the church should be the place, right? But again, I go back to when I was 15, and didn't want to embarrass myself or the church or my family. So you don't go there. So churches need to talk about it. They need to be more open about it. And we try to go to a different church every Sunday or every other Sunday, and just get our foot in the door. And I think getting your foot in the door with the churches is harder than it is getting into the legislator's office. Churches really don't talk about it.
That's tough, and that's so true, because a lot of people or a lot of churches nowadays don't want to they don't want to rock the boat. They want the congregants that are gonna support them, and I think that's when people get into twisting scripture and all kinds of things, and people aren't educating themselves or being in the word enough to know different, to know what they're being taught.
Yeah, if you think about, abortion doesn't just affect the mother that aborted the baby or the father of the baby. There's usually other people involved, their parents involved, maybe 4 or 5 different people, right? His parents, her parents, and so when a decision is made to end a life, it affects a lot of people. So it's not just the 60 million aborted babies and the one mother that was out there. It's 60 million times 5 times 10.
Yeah.
So you have to realize that, or I remind myself often of, no matter who I'm talking to, they've probably had some instance of abortion in their family somehow, right? So they don't want to talk about it. Churches don't want to talk about it, because you think about that, and probably half the people in the church have been affected by it in some way. So we're gonna have to ease into this culture change. It doesn't happen overnight. It's going to take some time.
You made a comment earlier about some of the young women that you encounter, and you said that most of them don't have a man in their life. I want to kind of segue into, why do you think that is? What do you think has changed over the last who knows how many years or decades? What do you think the problem with young men and even middle-aged men in our society today is?
Well, that's a big question.
Yes, sir.
It's going to take a lot of answer there. So it's culture again has told men that they don't have to, right? Churches aren't telling men, your responsibility, if you get a young girl pregnant, you are a dad at that point, whether you want to be or not. And so churches better start having programs for young dads, because I got news for them. At 15, that's what kids are thinking about, right?
That's the only thing.
Yeah. So again, the onus goes back to the churches. They've got to step up their game and not be afraid to talk about it. The other thing is that it's a sad reality, but it's just sex, right? I had no intention of ever being with that man or with that girl. It was just sex. And so that's again, it's a culture thing we got to change.
Agreed.
So kind of going back to your story a little bit. So we talk about salvation a lot, but we haven't really hit on sanctification much. Um, what do you think? Kind of just talk about those years, I guess, of finding, uh, you were saved, and then life happened, and then in your adult life, um, God really revealing Himself to you, the signs, the this and that, all the things that God used. Talk about that progress, I guess, from maybe the time frame that you would call day one until now. How have you grown as a man in your faith walk? What's that look like, and the growth over those years?
Well, I guess the first answer to that question would be, I hope that people see that I'm a different person than I was, because I am a different person than I was. I feel different than I ever did. I think different than I did. Um, you know, Bible says pray constantly without stop about everything, and I do. And so I think when you start praying to God about everything, it changes your life, because you realize that you're not facing something on your own, that He's there with you. And I think that's the biggest thing for me, is just the validation that I get. Like if you're talking to somebody and you ask them a question, you expect an answer, and so you wait for the answer. And it's the same way with God. When you pray about something, you're expecting an answer, and sure enough, the answer comes. Sometimes the answer is not now. Sometimes the answer is no, but you usually know when you got an answer from God. So I think that's the main difference, is I feel His presence all the time, and
Yeah.
and so many stories I could go into about how He's revealed Himself, that it would take longer than an hour podcast.
Sure. So kind of a cliche question, but if you could go back and talk to your 15-year-old self, 14-year-old, whatever, what would you say? What would you tell yourself, as a Christian man now? Um, what would you tell that young David?
You mean, what would I tell my grandsons?
Yeah, that too.
Yeah, because that's really what it comes down to, is I can't go back and change me, but as part of being a grandparent is you get to tell your grandkids and show them, right? I can tell them, but showing them how to live differently is much better way than telling them how to live. So I hope I don't let you down in that, Drew.
No, you hadn't yet. That's good. That's a good point, because I think that we often think, what could I have changed, or what could I have done differently, or whatever. We don't always think about what we can do now that would have that impact.
I don't think I could go back to when I was 15 and get anything through my head. What was it? Forrest Gump said, "You can't fix stupid." So
Yeah.
back then it was stupid.
Well, David, you have an amazing story, and it's really, really powerful, and I think guys need to hear it. And I hope that this can be a platform where guys, young guys, middle-aged guys, old guy, any guy, needs to hear guys like you be real and be honest, like you have been. And I just can't thank you enough for telling us your story. It's amazing. So thank you for coming on here. We really sincerely appreciate it.
Yeah.
Well, you're quite welcome. I don't enjoy telling my story, but I do. Um, I do it because God tells you to, right? Share your testimony, and your testimony is powerful. There's somebody
Yes,
out there
sir.
that's going to understand that testimony. And like Drew said before we prayed, before we got started, just looking for that one person that your testimony will make a difference to.
Yeah.
I appreciate the opportunity to get on here.
We appreciate you, man.
People being able to hear your story and see how, a negative thing occurred, bad choices were made at one point, and then what that has now morphed into. We talk a lot about like how do we justify the bad and evil things in this world, and like man makes bad choices, but look what God can do with them. One small choice has led to this entire ministry, and the number of lives that you're changing now because of it is pretty powerful. So I just echo what Brendan said. Like, thank you very much for sharing that with us and with the world.
You're welcome.
Yeah, we'd love to have you on again sometime. Love to hear about what you guys are doing with Go Life and with Earthly Dwellings. They're amazing ministries, and happy to help you in any way we can with that. We'll certainly implore our listeners to pray for you guys, and check out. I'm sure you guys have websites and social medias and things like that. Just search Go Life. Where can people find you? GoLife.org.
Perfect. Yeah. We'll drop that in. We'll drop links in the descriptions of all of our stuff we put out.
All right. And the other one's earthlydwellings.org. So
Earthly Dwellings. Perfect.
Yeah. Hopefully we'll come back in about a year or less and talk about the progress we've made there too.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Absolutely. We'd love to. Well, guys, this has been episode 7 of the Redeemed Legion podcast with David from Go Life and Earthly Dwellings. And thank you, David. And guys, head over to our social media pages, Redeemed Legion on all the socials. Also, check out our website. We've got merch. The hats we're all wearing. T-shirts, I think, are going to be on there soon. The shirt that Pete's wearing. Hurry up and put those on there, Pete.
I will. Working on it.
Yeah, do it faster. Yeah, guys, thanks for listening, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for what you're doing.
Thank you.